I was just found guilty on 3 different charges for asking people to email the Montreal police to drop charges that were subsequently dropped and drop conditions that were found to be illegal. And this is all in response to a genocide-promoting social media influencer, Dahlia Kurtz. The court ruling today is a statement that the public doesn't have the right to petition state officials. It's a very dangerous precedent. We will be appealing it, but basically a judge today stated that it was illegal for me to ask people to email a police investigator to drop conditions and charges that were subsequently dropped in both cases. And it's a sad commentary, or dangerous ruling on the future of our right to petition state officials for abusing their authority.
And this seems to be a new precedent because the prosecution wasn't able to come up with any previous case law where somebody had been found guilty, as you were, for simply sending emails to the police station. What do you think about the precedent that this conviction, if not overturned, could have on political activism in Canada?
Yeah, essentially, I mean, I was technically on trial, but in fact, Action Network email petitions were on trial, and that type of technology more generally. The notion that we can't use this, email petition technology, which is used widely by all kinds of different political groups, the notion that that's a threat to the police or a harassment. Let's be clear here, this was a police investigator's work email account. There was no, the petition began with "Dear" and ended with "Sincerely." There was no violent or any abusive language or whatnot. And it is unfortunately, this ruling gives the police further latitude to define questioning of their decisions and policy, to define that as criminal, and to further insulate the police from being responsive to the public, responsive to public criticism and the like. So it's I think a very damaging ruling, and that we're going to appeal again. But it does fit within a broader context of Zionists using the legal system to basically deter criticism, and also to sort of suck energy and resources into fighting with the state, rather than trying to specifically undercut Canadian complicity in genocide. So it's a bad ruling from the standpoint of anti-Zionist kind of campaigning. It's a bad ruling from the standpoint of the public being able to challenge state officials and their decisions, specifically the police. And it's a bad decision from the standpoint of having the police be responsive to the public.
And in the reading of the judgment, the judge mentioned that the 3,000 or so people who had sent in these emails were not informed of the legal context surrounding your bail conditions. Of course, they were trying to impose bail conditions in which you would not be able to speak about the case. What do you think about the fact that the judge really dismissed these 3,000 individuals as if they were simply sheep following your orders, and that in fact you were responsible for all of the messages that these individuals emailed to the police?
Yeah, I mean, she's denying the political context, of course, which is that the people who emailed understood that I was being targeted for social media commentary, not for any sort of violent or abusive thing that I did, and that the other part of the context being that the Zionist forces use legal system to try to stamp down criticism of Israel's genocide. But also, as you note, it basically, I mean, I promoted an email action alert campaign. Whether people emailed the police, that was up to them. I didn't force anyone to do it. I just explained what had happened and called on people to do it. And so those individuals were all, did it of their free will. And why are they not? Why are the 4,000 or so people not all viewed as interfering in police affairs or harassing police? Why is it just me as the person who promoted the petition? So there's a question there. But the judgment also goes into, basically the police officer is saying that they were disrupted from their work because they had lots of emails in their inbox. It may be true that it took some time to introduce a filter. They said they had a filter for these emails on by 9:15 in the morning of the day they started receiving the emails, so maybe an hour into the workday. These are things that, this is not a substantial impact. Lots of elements of police work that have nothing to do with email. And the SPVM, the Montreal Police, should do a better job of having, email capacity and stuff like that. So, but yeah, the basic notion that the individuals who made the decision to email the police, that they were just acting as a sheep of on my orders, is to completely deny their agency, but also the broader political context that basically everyone who acted, of course, understood very clearly, which again is the fact that pro-genocide forces have used the legal system, policing system, to target those campaigning against Canadian complicity in genocide.
And during the trial, your defense lawyer, John Philpott, made the argument that you were simply emailing a public official and that the police officer in question was indeed a public official. Therefore, this should be protected by freedom of speech and really basic democratic rights within Canada. Do you think that this verdict is really giving some sort of a special status to police officers, that they'll now be shielded from criticism?
Well, I think it very clearly is doing so, because if you look at Action Network type email campaigns, a well-known group that does that, Honest Reporting Canada, does it from a pro-genocide, pro-apartheid direction. They often have campaigns emailing journalists. Sometimes it's prominent journalists, sometimes it's like student journalists at the Concordia student newspaper. So why is that allowed? Why are you allowed to call on people to email journalists at the Concordia link and maybe have hundreds or thousands of people email them, but you don't have the right to do that with a police investigator by her own admission that she brought in this condition which restricted my right to talk about Dahlia Kurtz. That was something that she very rarely does, and it was completely up to her to impose that condition. Also, the police investigator obviously had some input on deciding to bring in this charges of charging me for harassing Dahlia Kurtz, which again was subsequently abandoned. It was dropped in July. So this police investigator is not just some sort of like powerless official. She was a state official that, again, brought in a unlawful condition against me and is heavily responsible for bringing in charges against me. So obviously they have a lot more power than some student journalist, and it's considered acceptable to have email campaigns targeting student journalists or other journalists. There's lots and lots of email campaigns that I've participated in directed at all kinds of different state officials of all kinds of different levels. Why is the police, why is there special rights for the police? Well, why are they specially insulated from that type of email campaign? So I think that this definitely reinforces this notion, which I think maybe already exists a bit with the notion of obstruction of justice, or entrave in French. It reinforces this notion that the police are some special agency, and they have basically the right to criminalize questioning of their policy that they don't like. That's, I think, quite a dangerous precedent.
And now that you've been found guilty, the sentence has not been handed down yet. There's a hearing for that, I believe, in early March. What do you think about the sentence, what it could be? You've already spent 5 days in jail over these charges. What do you think the sentence could be, and what do you think the impact is in terms of the precedent? And is the precedent going to be almost more significant than any sentence you could receive?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the personal side of things here. I spent 5 days in jail. It's possible they'll sentence me to more than that, but as I understand it, 5 days in preventative becomes 10 days of an actual judgment. So the likelihood that they would throw me in jail for longer than that seems unlikely. And even if they did, if I spent 2 weeks in jail for this, I mean, I obviously don't want to do that, but that's not that significant in the big picture here. The political precedent, I think, is far more important here. And again, I think that the narrow of the political precedent is giving the police greater latitude to define legitimate criticism done in a totally non-abusive, totally even friendly way. Again, the petition said "dear" and ended with "sincerely." Giving them greater latitude to basically say, well, you interrupted the workings of our work, and therefore it's criminal. I've called police stations in the past, and when protesters have been detained, and there's call-outs for people to call the local police station to call for the release of whoever's been detained. I've done that multiple times, and sometimes I've even talked to a police officer. That's a far greater impact on their work than emails into a email inbox. So that precedent, I think, is I'm far more worried about the precedent, political legal precedent, than I am about the consequences on myself as an individual.
And one of the possibilities in terms of sentence would be perhaps being placed on parole for a certain amount of time. Obviously, you're somebody who's involved in a lot of different protests multiple times per week. You like to go and confront politicians, ask them difficult questions, that sort of thing. Do you think that if hypothetically that you were sentenced to probation, that this would impact your work as a political author and activist?
Yes, it is possible, and often they'll have conditions that say you have to keep the peace, which sounds fine, but the police whenever you give the police greater latitude to arrest or impose punishment, that becomes a problem. So yes, I'd be very. I'm concerned about the impacts, not necessarily the impacts it would have on me, either going to jail or the unpleasantness of that, but more on the impacts of the ability to engage in journalistic and political activism. But we'll see what actually comes out of sentencing. The whole nature of this case is so political that unfortunately, it's probably not unlikely that the prosecution tries to go in that direction of bringing in some form of condition against me that constrains my ability to continue engaging in sort of political activism or journalistic disruption or whatever you want to call the challenging of politicians that I engage in.
And I guess the next step is going to be the appeal. Do you have any details you want to share about that?
Well, we have 30 days to appeal. We're going to appeal, and we'll see what happens there. Again, because as the judge relayed, there was no precedents, no other rulings that she was basing upon. Presumably, there's greater latitude to appeal or to have success in appealing. But we're going to appeal. But at this stage, we don't know any of the details of exactly what the arguments we're going to make on that front.
And just in closing, what's your message to your supporters who have watched you go through this political trial, have seen you go to jail, be released, only to be put on trial and now found guilty? What's your message to your supporters?
Well, the message is this is inconsequential compared to what the victims of Israeli assaults in Gaza. Everyone in Gaza has been displaced, has been most people had their homes destroyed, and of course, an incredible number have been killed. So this is on a person. What's impacted on me is inconsequential. Now, what we have to do, though, unfortunately, the political thing of people getting deterred from taking action, and that troubles me a bit in terms of seeing this legal system targeting me, how that kind of maybe scares people from engagement. I think that's very troubling. But we just have to fight through it. I mean, it's called a struggle for a reason. And again, if you look at the big picture political issue here, which is of course Canada's support for genocide, what's happened to me is absolutely inconsequential compared to the incredible horror that had been imposed upon Palestinians.
Thanks.